Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So my name is Lee Allen. I'm Senior Vice President for Northern EMEA at Corcentric. Today's webinar is titled Hit Your Cash Flow KPIs in 2022. And there's a distinction I'd like to add from the outset. That's the word guaranteed, because this isn't a self-help idea or some form of theoretical advice. My job today is to illustrate a practical idea on how DSO can be fixed so your cash flow is predictable, dependable, and guaranteed. If you have any questions on the way through, please use the chat box, and time permitting, I'll answer them at the end. But first, allow me to provide some context on Corcentric. Corcentric was started in the US in the mid-90s, originally founded as a group purchasing organization for automotive companies. It was unique in that that service was underpinned by technology, and the aim was to help companies reduce the cost of doing business so they could invest in sustainable growth. That aim and the focus on technology remains part of our DNA today. We're able to provide a global solution. It's supported by 550 employees from 15 offices worldwide. The UK office based in London and has responsible for all businesses in the northern part of EMEA. That's where I am usually based, although like many people during the pandemic, I'm working from home. So I'm currently presenting this from Kent, the Garden of England. We connect something like 2.25 million businesses on behalf of our 2,500 customers. And those customers are entrusting 20 million transactions per annum to our services. It totals just north of $100 million worth of business. Those clients cover a wide range of industry sectors. There's no real vertical market where we're more prevalent or suited. I think that's because of the universal nature of the functions and the challenges within finance. But having said that, the broad range and variety within our client base does mean we're experienced in accommodating those specific nuances a business may have. These, of course, are the logos that have brand recognition, but we work with all business types and sizes, structured in a number of different ways. So, for instance, ITV is a UK-only business, whereas Unisys is a global one. VF, which is the company behind brands such as North Face and Timberland, they operate from a shared service centre. So they've consolidated functions for business units throughout Europe. So we're used to working with systems, everything from legacy through to ERP, consolidated or disparate, and simple to complex organizational structures. We highlighted Daimler in our email invites. They used to have an average DSO of 37 days, and we were able to reduce that to 15. Now, their revenue is about $48 billion per annum, but we can achieve that with companies that are smaller or indeed larger than that. Incidentally, the average DSO in Europe currently sits at 98 days. So what do we actually do? Well, Corcentric has a broad range of solutions that help companies to purchase, pay, and get paid. And really, there's three components to our offering. The first of which is technology. As I said before, that really underpins everything we do. And within technology, there's three pillars to the platform. The first one is source to pay. So we have solutions in sourcing, supplier and contract management, all the way through to automated AP, PO matching, the sort of things that help manage the accounts payable side of the house. And then, of course, on the flip side, we have order to cash. We have solutions there related to the management of the accounts receivable process, things such as electronic invoicing, presentment and collection. And then the third pillar, and this really sits between and ties the two other solutions together, is a payments business. The second component of our service is advisory. So we have specialist business analysts that can evaluate your financial data and importantly benchmark that against our aggregated client experience. And that part's essential in order to understand what technology should be deployed where, when, and how. It's something that helps make the invisible visible within your business. And finally, we provide finance. So funding that helps with the working capital management. That could be by extending your days payable outstanding, or as we're going to look at today, reducing the days sales outstanding in order to achieve your cash flow KPIs. And both of those activities are really centered on finding the money that's locked inside your cash conversion cycle and then bringing it to the bottom line so you can unlock your working capital. So Corcentric is a blend of technology, people and finance that delivers a unique, unfair advantage to our clients. So let's look at the Managed AR solution. This is the service that Daimler is using to achieve their cash flow KPIs, which include fixing their DSO at 15 days. And when you outsource a business process, really you're putting something between you, the supplier, and your customer, the buyer. Typically that's people, process, and technology. But in order to guarantee the outcome, there's also something else we need to add, and that's the funding component. That unique mix of BPO and finance is what underwrites the results. Now, the first of which would be a reduction in the DSO. So every invoice is paid by Corcentric, and that means this is a full ledger solution. It's not invoice or customer specific. We will fund 100% of the ledger. Of course, that means it can be applied to sub-ledgers as well, based on product or territory or some other segmentation such as value. In fact, that's often how clients start with us. They look for a segmented proof of concept. But we pay to a fixed DSO. That could be to terms, or indeed it could be accelerated and it could be paid faster. So we've spoken already about a DSO fixed at 15 days, but for different clients, we fix at 30, 45, and others as well. This service then totally de-risks your collections process because we're providing the service on a non-recourse basis. We take the full ledger, good, bad, and indifferent. And that means there's no more late payments, no more bad debt, and no more write-offs. And the team here is normally used to augment rather than replace your own team. So that would allow your existing FTE resource to be deployed in a more focused way. You can also support growth without the need for the recruitment. I'm told at the moment it's a candidates market and everyone's struggling to recruit. Because we are paying our client, the cash application process also becomes streamlined. It becomes a single consolidated payment and remittance. We also provide payment detail in an agreed system-friendly format to support the automatic ingestion into your systems. Corcentric operates on a business model as a service. That means there's no capital outlay or investment in technology or infrastructure or systems required. It also means the service continually evolves along with the market. Because this is our business to develop the technology in line with our client requirement, it means it's future-proofing it. And lastly, we provide a best-in-class experience for our customers, and more importantly, for their buyers. All of these benefits can be classified in one of two ways. There are those that are measurable, where we can calculate a cash figure for the value of that benefit. But there's also those where we can't. And that's not to say that they don't have a benefit in real terms, just that there isn't an easy metric that makes it tangible in cash terms. we're going to look at both, but let's begin with those that are measurable, because they would be the ones that would form the basis of your business case. There are 8 benefits that we can measure. The first is working capital. So a higher DSO means more capital is stuck in the cash conversion cycle. So lowering the DSO puts cash on the balance sheet, and we can calculate what that is. The next thing we can calculate is the comparative cost of borrowing those funds. That's based on a company's WACC, has an established metric that we can use. Thirdly, there's the cost of insuring the receivable against a credit guarantee to protect you against your non-paying clients. Again, there are established industry-wide rates that we can drop into this. The last measurable benefit on this slide is the bad debt. There's a cost to customer defaults, debt recovery action, and we can calculate based on your historical write-offs and our industry knowledge what that's going to be. And continuing with the measurable benefits, there's also a cost to process and allocate payments that come into your business. So AP automation is part of the broader Corcentric services. So we see lots of examples of labor-intensive processes to open correspondence, scanning checks, key data and update systems. Again, there's a very real tangible cost that we can calculate for that. And of course, there is the cost of FTEs. Staff and expense might be more about redeploying resource, or even maybe sustaining growth without adding resource. But either way, again, it's a quantifiable cost. The next measurable is the cost to produce and send an invoice via multiple channels. Monitoring the success of that delivery, send it again, fulfill copies, and so on and so forth. And this includes the integration cost with third-party e-invoicing companies. These are the ones that are appointed by your customer as they attempt to digitize their own AP department. And lastly, we can calculate the revenue impact on EBITDA through growth. So growth is supported by new customer acquisition, retention of customers, and increased sales because you're reducing discrepancies and disputes. So we can take a look at what that actually looks like. So this is genuine client data, reflects their actual situation. We have their permission to share this data, but obviously we need to protect their identity. Just to say it's not Daimler, their revenue is $48 billion. That produces a somewhat dazzling set of stats. So for this example, I used a mid-sized business with sales in the managed ledger of £100 million per annum. That makes the maths easy if you want to scale it up or down to reflect your situation. The average DSO within this example was 57 days, and we accelerated it to 15. So on day 15, we paid all the invoices. And you can see the cash value for each of those measured benefits, which totals £13.7 million. So there's a cost of unlocked working capital, there's the cost of bad debt, credit guarantee, DSO acceleration, payment processing, FTE, invoice presentment, and growth in revenue. Now, I expect this slide really generates 2 questions in most people. The first one is, how on earth is that calculated? And the second one would be, and what does this all cost? As I said, the illustration is based on real client data. So these are the metrics that sit behind those figures. These are the workings out that we do. Obviously, every situation is going to be different. No 2 businesses are the same. But that's where the advisory part of our service comes in. So our business analysts working with your data will be able to create a business case which is specific to your example based on your own metrics. So for instance, you might not use credit insurance, so that's not a problem. That will be accurately reflected in what we calculate. The business case is also going to include pricing, so you have full oversight and the pathway to the ROI. Now the pricing is calculated on multiple factors. There are of course sliders and variables within that can be adjusted in collaboration to create the right result. As I said, there's also additional value that this program brings, but the benefits are less easy to provide a tangible cash figure for. We have tried, but I don't think there's an established mechanism for doing so. But nevertheless, those benefits still exist, and so for completeness, they're listed here. But how on earth you calculate the value? For instance, what is the cost for reduced IT burden? What would they work on if they weren't integrating with e-invoice platforms? Or what's the value of better forecasting or scalability that doesn't include recruitment and HR costs? So here's 4 here. There's another 3 there. Similar vein. Is it possible to calculate the legal or the onboarding costs for new clients? What is the value of providing flexible payment terms? These are all benefits provided by the Corcentric managed AR program, but they're all difficult to measure in terms of real value. And so I think that sort of feeds me back to where we started. I mean, hopefully I've shown that DSO can be fixed and your cash flow can be guaranteed. Hopefully I've also highlighted some additional benefits that you may not have previously considered. And in our example, we had a £100 million ledger, DSO reduced from 42 to 15 days, which generated £13.7 million worth of cash flow. So the question to you would be, would a similar guaranteed result help your cash flow KPI for the year ahead? Thank you for your time. I'm happy to field a few questions if any have come in.
Right, Lee, yes, we do. We've got a couple of questions that have come in. The first one is, you speak of guarantees, but how is it guaranteed? How's the service guaranteed?
Yeah, so I mean, hopefully, maybe I've answered that on the way through, but if I understand the question correctly, maybe it's related to like contingency. So yeah, what happens if I don't get a 15-day DSO? This isn't really that sort of guarantee. It's not like a money back situation. We'll do our best. If it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. When I say guaranteed, I mean the outcome will happen. That's what I mean by guaranteed. So no ifs, no buts. If you want your DSO fixed at 15 days, we pay on 15 days, always. So that's what I mean by guaranteed. It will actually happen.
Good. Okay, we've got the second question. Are there any limitations?
Sorry, what was that, John?
Are there any limitations?
Limitations. Yes, generally speaking, this is a full book solution. So what I mean by that is we expect a sort of diverse ledger that would contain a range of countries and terms and different customer profiles, and we would treat that as a whole consideration. So everything's factored in, and I think I said earlier there's an acceptance that we have to take the rough with the smooth within that. Of course, if your full ledger is very high risk, maybe it's entirely comprised of customers with low credit scores or based in countries that are considered challenging, or you've got extraordinary long terms and all of those things persist, then maybe the commercials would make sense in that case, because we would price it with all of that in consideration. But I think that's probably a pretty rare, if not hypothetical situation. So not really limitations because we take the full book as a whole, good, bad, and indifferent.
Okay, and I think we've got there's another question that's come through. Are there any limits on enterprise that you will work with?
No, not at all. So I don't know if that question's driven by someone believing they're a small business or a very large business, but I think within the customer base we have that kind of spectrum of business size. So I think it's an appropriate solution regardless of the size of your enterprise. It works because of the universal nature of the challenges that people face.
Great, yes, and it was, just at a qualification, it was size of enterprise. So I think you've answered the question there.
Great, thank you.
So that concludes the questions that have come through.
Great, well, thanks, Lee, and thanks to all the attendees for joining us today. If we're unable to answer anyone's questions during the Q&A, we'll reach out individually with a response, so do get in touch. And everyone will receive a recording of the presentation after today's webinar, and that'll be over in the next few days. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.